Hey everyone, welcome back. We're going to talk about Valrhona today. I have a few bars laying around my house of Valrhona. We're off to a bad start with the pronunciations. Okay, Valrhona, that's what we're going to talk about today. Valrhona was founded in 1922. It's a French chocolate company by pastry chef Albrecht Guironnet, maybe, in Tain-la-Hermitage, France. That's still where they have a factory located there. The original name was La Chocolaterie de Viveres. Yeah, this is going to be a good one. All right, so onward. Okay, the area that they are in is a famous wine growing region. And so it's called the Valley of the Rhone. It's pretty famous in history. In French, though, you would say it as Vallée du Rhône. And that's where the name Valrhona comes from, Val-Rhone. So the Vallée du Rhône. So that's where they got the name. It was really hard to find information about the past of this company. It's been really well sanitized by the corporation. The same copy is everywhere that you look about the company itself. And so it was really hard for me to find information of the early 1900s about the company itself. Later on, it was easier to find information after World War II in the 1980s when the corporate structure became solidified. So it's this is a kind of all over the place video. So 1922, it was founded. In 1947, they changed their name to Valrhona to reflect the area that they were in. They were mostly a commercial producer for a really long time. So the reason that it was founded was that the pastry chef Albrecht, he didn't like the chocolate that he was getting for his pastries, so he decided to make a better quality for himself. And he did that. And for years and years, up until the 1980s, they were mostly producing for commercial use. Mostly couverture, which is chocolate with a little bit extra cocoa butter in it so that it's easier to work with for pastry chefs. So in the 1980s, there was a bit of a French food revolution. The French decided that they were going to re-educate their country's palate, and they were going to unify words and terms used for fine French food. I actually want to read you this quote from this book that I have about the history of French chocolate, because it's funny to me. So it says, "Chocolate is still not the object of as much attention as wine. Who knows today, for instance, that there are as many varieties, regions of cacao, bean cultivation, good and bad years, and methods of preparation? How is it possible to appreciate the best vintages of chocolate without being aware of their existence? The true appreciation of great chocolate presupposes, as for any product of particular art, an exact knowledge of the techniques required that governed its creation as well as its history. This knowledge alone serves as a corrective to the vagaries of taste." So really, that wasn't quite the quote I was looking for. I didn't have the right one marked. But they were really looking to halt the spread of lesser cuisine, to slow down the introduction of American fast food into the French culture. And so they really wanted to emphasize the fine foods of France and to have a unified knowledge of it. And so in the 1980s, there was a big effort to re-educate the French palate. And Valrhona was involved in that. So let's see. In the 1980s, Valrhona was bought by Bongrain, a cheese conglomerate. They were then sponsoring all kinds of events to promote French chocolate. So They bought the Maison du Chocolat, which is a famous chocolate store in France. They were sponsoring the Salon du Chocolat. They were sponsoring the Pastry World Cup. They were promoting exclusive chocolate clubs, clubs de croqueurs du chocolat. Who wants to start one of those with me? Sporting events. They started the Valrhona Cooking School. They were even going into elementary school classes, and Valrhona was sending samples of their chocolate into these elementary school classes to get the kids to recognize what good food tasted like. So they were doing this through the 1980s, but it wasn't until 1986 until Valrhona started selling direct to consumer. So up to this point, it was all commercially sold. And as they strove to obtain a common language for fine foods like wine and chocolate, Valrhona, like other manufacturers in France, borrowed terms from the wine industry like Grand Cru, like single origin, like single estate, like vintage, to describe their chocolates. So they introduced their first Grand Cru chocolate, Guanaha, in 1986, I think. It's a 70% cacao, and this was the first of the Grand Crus that they introduced. And they say that the formulation has not changed at all since the 1980s, so they're still making it the same way it was. And this is a favorite of lots and lots of pastry chefs. So they also then introduced some single origin bars. This one is one of the single origin bars. They had what's called a vintage line. I want to get the names right on this, so hold on, let me just check. So I'll make sure that I say the names right. So this is from their vintage line, so they borrowed that term from wine terminology. It means beans from 1 year from a single plantation, and it was all 64%. So you have Grand Cuva, which was a Trinidad bean. It was like a little spicy and a little buttery and nice bar. Pamakia, which was from Madagascar. And when I talked about Ukusen's bars, I talked a little bit about the plantations down there. So if you want to know more about that one, flip back to that video. Palmyra, which was a Venezuelan Criollo, which they brought in to replace their Chihuahua. So there's actually an interesting story with the Chihuahua. So Chihuahua is a town farming cooperative in Venezuela that is very famous for their Criollo beans. For a very long time, Valrhona had exclusive rights to the harvest coming out of Chihuahua. In 2004, they lost those rights to Amade, the Italian chocolate maker, and this was a bit of a coup. There was some bad feelings there. And so they had to find a replacement for that bar, and they started making Palmyra, which was the Venezuelan Criollo. As it turns out, Amade eventually lost those rights to the Chihuahua as well. And the first, just as a side note, the first American producer to get his hands on those beans was Art Pollard from Amano. So fun little corporate history there with purchasing those beans. So those are some of their vintage lines. They've added more to that. I think they have about 18 origins that they do now. And they're always looking for new things. Like, it seems like about once a year they have something new on their website, a new origin or a new flavor or something that they've come out with. So in 2015, the Bon Grain Group changed their name to Savencia Fromage and Dairy, and it's really hard to find out any kind of information about how Valrhona is a subsidiary of that. It's a big cheese and dairy maker. You would probably recognize many of the names that they have in there. One that you see a lot in the US is the Alouette spreadable cheeses. They have like 3.6 billion in revenue every year. Alex Bon Grain is still the chairman of the board, so he's one of the original creators of the Bon Grain family of pastry chefs. or from that family. He's not one of the original guys. But Valrhona is still a mostly commercial company. They focus on couverture. They focus on consistency of taste. Like I said, their Guanaja bar hasn't changed. Guanaja bar hasn't changed since 1986. So consistency is really good for pastry chefs, but not so exciting for chocolate tasters. But a lot of people, like Martin Christie of 70% in the International Chocolate Awards, he told me that Manjari is the reason that he started tasting chocolate, that he got into chocolate. So it was a gateway drug for a lot of chocolate connoisseurs. But even still, they only produce about 1% of the world production of chocolate. They still have their factory in Le Hermitage. What else do I want to tell you? Oh, they have this other one that I held up at the beginning, this Dulce. They claim that this is the first blonde chocolate. It was accidentally made. So in 1988, Frederick Bao became the head pastry chef, and he left some of their ivoire, their white chocolate, in a bain-marie for like a ridiculous amount of time, 10 hours or something like that. And he ended up with this Dulce. It's like a toasted white. And so they claim that they invented the first blonde chocolate. Is it a new chocolate? I don't know. Is it tasty? Yeah, sure. It's awesome to bake with. So let's open. I'm trying to decide if we should open the Manjari or the Guanaja. I'm feeling like the Manjari because the Guanaja is a blend. So I think we'll open this one. We'll take a look at the package. I'll tell you a little bit about it. So let's do that. All right, so let's take a look at the Manjari. So Valrhona, like I said, is the name that comes from Valley du Rhône. Here's a cocoa flower as their emblem up here. In 2014, they redid their packaging to really focus on the percentage of cacao. Now, you should know that percent does not mean a cacao is good or bad. It's simply an amount, and it can mean all kinds of different things, but they're choosing to focus on that. It's a dark chocolate at that percentage. It is a single origin from Madagascar. So Madagascar beans have a very typical terroir of being like citric acid, red fruit flavors in them. Let's take a look what it says on the back here. Yeah, so here we have the tasting notes: red fruit, roasted nuts, 64% cacao. So that 64% is a combination of, let's see if you can see it better, combination of cacao solids and cocoa butter. So they have the dark chocolate, they have the cacao, beans from Madagascar, sugar, and then added cocoa butter. And they do use an emulsifier, soy lecithin, which gives it a smoother mouthfeel. And they do add vanilla extract. In and of itself, these are not necessarily bad things. Some people are purists. Some people believe they add to and pronounce flavors that are already there. So, I mean, if you don't want to eat lecithin and vanilla, go for it. If you do, then go for it. I am not going to tell you which way is good or bad for you. Expiration date is always, you have a production date and an expiration date, which is always good. That means there's no preservatives in there. Here's the town that it's still being produced in, Town La Hermitage, their website. All right, let's open it up and take a look. Oh, look at that. So Valrhona has a unique bar, and actually more chocolate manufacturers are heading this way with their, they don't have the traditional equal squares in there. They're a little bit, so if you are sharing with your friends, one friend gets a little bit and one friend gets a big one. All right, 64% bar. Oh, it looks beautiful. So well tempered, beautiful color of the chocolate. It's got their flour here in the chocolate. It's a medium brown, slightly reddish color. Let's listen to the snap. Not bad. 64% with added cocoa butter. It's not going to have a huge snap. So pretty decent snap. It is a really nicely tempered bar, good looking bar. Let's give it a smell. Okay, when I smelled this bar, when I checked the aroma by warming it up a little bit, I do it by just rubbing my thumb on it and warming it up a little bit. Cocoa butter has the delightful property of melting near body temperature. I get fudgy, very chocolatey smell, a little bit of roast nuts. When you pop it in your mouth though, you definitely get the sugar right away. And after that's gone away a little bit, then you get the red fruit that's common to all Madagascar beans. It seems like it's the terroir for Madagascar. And you also get, it's like popping a chocolate covered raspberry strawberry in your mouth. And at the end you get a little bit of this roasted nut flavor. And it leaves you with a slightly bitter aftertaste. It's a nice bar. And you can see why this bar would get a lot of people into chocolate tasting. It can appeal to a lot of people. So that is Manjari. So that's Valrhona. Not a long one today. I was just looking back through one of my old chocolate journals. I have this one from, this looks like a Trader Joe's one. And I think Trader Joe's still sells it under this packaging. And I don't know why they have different packaging. It's weird. It says that it's still produced in France. But then I have, this is the old Manjari pre-2014 package. A little bit different shape to the bar. Then I have this one, the Alpaco. So they've undergone some changes in the last little while to improve their image and to communicate to the consumer more of the information that they want to know when choosing a good bar. So I mean, Valrhona, it's what happens when everyone gets taken over by corporations. A lot of people think that the quality of the bar goes down, but there are many, many pastry chefs out there who are still happy with the quality and still use it in baking. I myself use it in baking. I have this giant Dulce bar that I plan on using in baking. So it's good for baking. It's not the most pricey craft chocolate that you'll get, so it's not going to break your bank if you want to make a chocolate cake. But that's Valrhona, French chocolate maker. I think I have at least one more French chocolate maker that I want to talk about, if not more, in the schedule here, but I think we'll be doing a couple more European chocolate makers. If you want to know more about the history of craft chocolate and individual craft chocolate makers, then make sure you subscribe, and every Thursday you'll get a new video about it. Thanks.